I wanted to start out the series by first understanding the complexities and challenges that Black people and people of African heritage face living in a place like the city of Edmonton. To do that, I felt we must first look inward to seek to understand our diversity as a people. People of African heritage are not homogeneous, and many times our diversity polarizes our ability to work together. Services available are delivered to us as if Black people are homogeneous. Since this is not so, dissatisfaction becomes a fact as service gaps exist and other organizations spring up in an attempt to bridge the perceived gap. These differences or diversity among us are exploited by some to create polarization. Regardless of whether you are of African heritage, we must all work together. We must be intentional so that we can achieve our common goals, recognizing and leveraging the strengths of our diversity and uniqueness. With that in mind, women in our city have made significant efforts trying to unite people of African heritage away from division and polarization. The first woman is Beatrice Ghettuba. Beatrice immigrated to Canada from Kenya over 20 years ago and was instrumental in bringing Africans and Canadians together through conversation cafes while she was the board chair at Africa Center. Beatrice is a chartered accountant and has sat on a number of advisory boards and councils, providing advice on diversity and supporting equity within the African community. As a result of her leadership work at Africa Center, Beatrice was encouraged to run for elections, and in 2015, she ran in the federal elections for the office of MP and also ran for city council in 2017.
I would say that being here and at Africa Center, you have the ability to see Africans at their best or their worst in diaspora. And one of the things that comes to mind is how disintegrated we are. And especially we are so many 54 countries, but within each country, there is a nation. There are nations actually. In Kenya, it's 46, we call them tribes, but they're distinct because even their cultures are very distinct from the
Yeah, in Nigeria is over 300 tribes, or 300 languages, so I totally get it.
That's right. So when you have that and we come here, it's our relating to each other can be very testing because you would find that most of the times we share just the color of our skin. And for me, my cry to the people was, you represent me when you walk down the streets. And if you do something wrong, it is that Black person, I'm implicated in it. So we are in this together. Nobody can say, I don't have that, I don't care for that. If you don't care for it, especially navigating the system here as a newcomer, somebody else is going through that difficulties. And so my duty really was to get people to appreciate this, that we are very intertwined in a very special way. And also that the services that are offered to us by the government, all the three levels of government, they're given to us as African people, as if we're homogeneous. And so that necessitates people jostling for resources, and it's very easy to come into friction with each other. And so unfortunately, the way Africa Center was set up, it rendered itself to people grumbling, not feeling represented. So when I was there, anything that I tried to do was to see how can the African people see themselves represented, that their voices are heard. Because everywhere they went for resources, they were told, go to Africa Center. When they come, and they're speaking French, nobody understands because all the employees are speaking in English. So this made our differences very prominent, and it was very important. Even to me now, I still say it's very important that people of African origin think about how do we bring about unity among ourselves.
So then how do we bring about unity among ourselves? Like you've just said, we are clearly not homogeneous. Like, I mean, even within let's say West Africa, Nigeria and Ghana are always competing who has the best jollof rice, you know? And within Nigeria, the people on the West, on the East, the different parts are always competing about this is mine, this is not mine, you're this, and you're, you know, you're not part of me. How can we then truly unite ourselves so that when we come to work in this part of the world, either that be policy work, financial work, whatever work that we need to come together for a common goal, then we can present ourselves as united towards Canadians?
Yeah, that's a fair question. We must be intentional. We have to realize that it doesn't matter how successful you are in your career. You're only successful in your little environment. I am affected, and you're not treated any different sometimes than me by the dominant culture. So it's in your best interest, actually, to make sure that I'm doing good, that I'm not in the street because resources are not reaching to me. So I say that we need to be intentional because we are interrelated, interlinked. We like it or not. The color of our skin, when you walk down the street, they don't know you come from Nigeria. No. I come from Kenya. You're a black person.
Nobody cares.
So more the reason we should be able to come together. Another thing really that one makes me think like that, even to this day, is so that I encountered a French person when there was boom in Alberta, a French man who had come from Quebec. He's from Cameroon. He had been in Canada for 35 years, but there were no opportunities in Quebec. He moved this way, as most people did during the oil boom. And he told me, Beatrice, I have been here 35 years, but I'm still being treated as a newcomer. Now, during my time in the mid-20s, we were fewer. We have increased in number. Some of us have made strides, much more than the others, which is very good. Sometimes I've spoken to my daughter earlier on. I say, how are you going to bring your sons up? Because a black young man is inherently susceptible to being treated in a certain way. I said, what are you going to do? When they were younger, they were like, it's okay, we'll touch, he can do, so long as he does well in school. No. I don't want my grandchildren to have to deal with the issues that I dealt with when I was new. So we need to sit and belong. We need to sit and belong in this country. In fact, that was my motto when I ran for politics. We are here to stay. We need to represent ourselves and represent the mainstream community. So it's important that the next generation does not go through the problems that the current generation has gone through.
And Mrs. Beatrice, I'm going to get into your time in politics. I'm dying to get into that. But I want to first really address this issue of homogeneity because I think it's truly important and it can't be overemphasized. So I want to talk about what is it that you want to tell the younger generations to do to preserve the African culture that we're not doing?
That's a good question. First, I said that we need to be intentional. We need to learn and appreciate that we do not know each other. We need to appreciate. We cannot expect to tell the dominant culture to relate to us, to want to know us when we don't know each other. I rarely can represent your culture. As a Kenyan, I cannot really represent a certain culture of another country. So we need to know that these differences, we have them. They are a reality. But how do we turn them to our strength? So we need to be aware that whatever is our weakness in cohesiveness need to be our strength as our starting point. We acknowledge we are different. Is that a bad thing? No. There is no other diversity that comes better as it comes from people of African descent, because we are so diverse. we are a book to be written. So we can desire to understand each other. Our stories have not been told, and we need to stand up and be seen, because Africa has always been a sleeping giant. It's time it woke up. And I'm excited to hear that in a little while, we're going to have the largest population in the world.
Wow.
So that's exciting for me, that we are getting there, and we need to be prepared. Our stories need to be told. We need to hear, even here in Canada. It was a very interesting and very fulfilling time. I'm deeply grateful that I had that opportunity to run. And also, that's when I say that Canada is really a good place to be, that I could have that opportunity and also be able to stand out and say, I can represent you. I must say that I wasn't out there looking to run, but people told me, Beatrice, you can represent us on that. I was like, no. But people insisted and asked me to run. And so for women, especially, it's difficult. We are asked 9 times before we can say yes. I think I was asked probably 10 times that I said yes. It was an interesting time. I went out there in both times. I went out there and sold ideas the way I sold them, using the platform that I had. The pleasure of walking up to a door and knocking and speaking to someone, tell them I'm here and I want to represent you. At first, it's very daunting, but after 2 or 3, it becomes part of you, and you can say that very easily. And I enjoyed doing that, and because I'm very persuaded that we need to be out there and be seen. Like, we have a voice, we have something to contribute. And because I felt that I was contributing to the African community, and in so doing, interacting with the mainstream cultures, because they are the majority who offer services to the Black people. So I felt that, and I understood our issues enough to articulate. And actually, that's the message I got from people. Please stand, because you understand our issues, and bring them to the public, to Parliament, at the very least. By that time, I'd stayed in Canada for about almost 20 years, actually. So I was very sure of myself. My accent is mine, and I decided I'll wear it. What mattered to me is the ideas and how I'm able to articulate them. And I had every chance of winning, especially in the federal election. I actually came very, very close. I was second. And among the candidates who were slated to win by the federal statistics, I was one of them. So I actually stepped in to win, not to lose. Yeah. And now you spoke about what my experiences were interacting with people. It's very varied, but I don't remember any rudeness, actually, except one person who called me and said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I come from Kenya in Africa." And she continued to say, "Oh, do you speak English then? Are you educated?" and things like that. And I had to be polite, because because it was on phone, you don't know who that is. Then I spoke to her very politely, but she was decidedly rude. And another one who told me, "Oh, you've been here 20 years, so you feel that now you're ready." But other than those two, it was a very good experience. Every time I went to the door and knocked, I felt like I made a friend. I spoke to people, and they spoke back to me respectfully, and say, "That is very interesting," and seeing me coming out. And they were very excited. And even when I stood in the debating forums, I performed very well. So I was not an apologetic kind of candidate. It was exciting. But people have their preferences. I am aware of racism. I don't look for it. It is something that I promised myself in Canada, especially having lived in Ontario. I don't look for it. It is there. I am honest. But I relate from the position of everything is okay. If somebody takes me on and I perceive it is racially motivated, then like here in Alberta, I take them on too. I don't have to act nice or be coy. In Ontario, you would smile and go
Yeah,
away.
we're pretty direct in Alberta.
Yes, but here in Alberta, we are direct and we can argue and we can have a fight. So I don't remember experiencing it that overtly. And another thing that before I forget, for the municipal, for people of our community, finances are very, very critical. We sat in a forum, the city of Edmonton arranged that. They are very good, especially for women candidates. And they invited people who would contribute to our campaign, who normally are known, come and spoke to the candidates and see how you can support them. And they came, they passed around, and we were, I think, 2 people of African descent, and nobody came to our stand.
Wow.
So that's how you can, those are the subtle way that you can see some of these things come out to play.
So how can we invite the larger Canadian society to be part of our culture?
Good. I'm glad for that question, because I've always looked at that as critical. When you come to Canada, you learn the Canadian culture, because otherwise you will not move. In order to navigate the system, you have to painstakingly, in fact, even try to shade your accent. Unless you have a command of education,
some people change their names a little bit.
That's right.
Absolutely.
In order to fit in. And this is good. How do we work in the office? We all learn that. But we find that we have not, I don't think that the Canadian larger culture understands us. So it's our time. We need again to be intentional, very deliberate about it. We need to convince them, hey, you're missing out on who we are. How much do you know about us? It's time we imparted this to them. I know we have events of dance, clothing, food, and they come, but it should go more than that. For Africans, why is that cloth what it is? Why is that dish important? There is a story behind everything we do, and that's the reality of the African people. Everything is built in a fabric of who we are as a people. So we need to start talking to the mainstream culture, who we are. So we need to sell ourselves. We need to be confident that we understand them. We must stop operating among ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to go out there and say, hey, we need to meet you. Let's go to the churches. Have people come over home after church for lunch. Discuss some of these things. How much do you know? Go to another people. I spoke earlier on about many African organizations.
Yes.
Let those ones go. Find their niche and where the people are, and discuss the African culture and the beauty of it, because we really have stories to tell about our successes. Africa is not poverty and famine and sickness. No, let them come, ask them to come and say, how come we were not so impacted inordinately with COVID? We need to be, in everything that we do, we must be very intentional. And we need to be understood. It's not, it also means giving. We have to volunteer. Let us seek volunteer in Canadian-led organizations. Let's not be quiet. Wherever we are, let us be impactful. And for people who want to go into politics, I would say that as Africans, we are very political. We're very politicized because politics happens in Africa in a very unique way. Because first, it's not our way. Democracy, the way it's been brought to Africans, it's something that was imposed to us by externally. So as a result of that, there's a period we saw a lot of turmoil. And of course, we took over from the colonialist and prepared. So mistakes were bound to take place, to happen. And then the next generation was like, why are you doing these things like that? Then without us sitting and having a conversation, changes came through coup d'etat. And in Africa, almost 90% of the countries went through that kind of situation. So as a result of that, our political knowledge is very heightened. We understand politics.
Yes, we do.
So sometimes we come here and you stand up and say, I'll go and stand. I'll just go and stand into politics, even without what is required. So people need to read history. How do Canadians do their politics? What is party politics as it's in Canada? What is the difference between that and any other? Not that we don't understand these things, but how it operates in a mature democracy like this one. I know they're facing challenges, but for now we know that we need to understand that and then gauge yourself. Before you step out, do a lot of consulting. Buy people in the community, find out whether they buy into it, see if you can convince them, and get to some of the mainstream Canadians and talk to them. Find out whether you have that support. I had to do that in both instances, especially talking to the people in the mainstream culture. So people need to be aware of what they are bringing. Be very clear, not because it feels nice, not because I want to be famous, I want to advance my career. Mm-hmm. You have to have a calling and step out genuinely and do what needs to be done because you're carrying the name of Africans with you.
In her time as board chair for Africa Center, Beatrice Ghettuba leveraged her accounting background to manage in-house accounting for Africa Center and achieved credible setup for an accounting system to manage the reporting of grants. Beatrice is currently a member of Impact Institute of Canada and is actively involved in writing relations conversations held by the John Humphrey Center for Peace and Human Rights. She continues to be involved in a number of mentorship engagements in both Kenya and Canada. If you are a Black Muslim woman and require support, there are organizations in our city targeted at supporting people of African heritage, such as the Africa Center discussed in the interview and Sisters Dialogue. Africa Center, also known as the Council for Advancement of African Canadians in Alberta, is the largest Pan-African non-profit organization in Western Canada. It serves as a community hub, providing programming and access to services from a place of cultural awareness to the families in our community. Sisters Dialogue is a grassroots organization providing culturally safe spaces and supports for racialized Muslim women and girls through an intersectional, collaborative, and women-centered framework.